In the quiet heart of Manhattan, where dreams intertwine with shadows, a tale of humiliation and retribution began. It wasn't a grand spectacle, not at first, just a cruel, dismissive act that would ripple through the city's foundations. Imagine, if you will, a young woman named Sophia, her spirit as resilient as the skyscrapers she served. For 6 relentless hours, she navigated the opulent ballroom of the Riverside Grand Hotel, a silent observer to the extravagance she could only dream of. Champagne flutes chimed, laughter echoed, but Sophia remained a ghost, unnoticed, save for the sting of condescension. Then came Table 7. 5 men, fueled by privilege and potent cocktails, their arrogance dripping like the ice in their glasses. Among them, Ethan Marlowe, a face of entitlement framed by perfect teeth and a watch that could buy Sophia's humble apartment 10 times over. He saw her, not as a person, but as a servant, a nameless face to be toyed with. His words, laced with venomous curiosity, sought to expose the chasm between their worlds, to remind her of her place. Sophia, trained to absorb such indignities, offered only professional neutrality. But Ethan wasn't finished. He wanted to break her, to shatter the composure she wore like armor. In a moment that stretched into eternity, he seized a glass of Coca-Cola and unleashed it upon Sophia, drenching her in cold, sticky humiliation. The laughter of his companions echoed in the stunned silence of the ballroom, each drop a brand on her dignity. Sophia stood frozen, the weight of their cruelty pressing down on her, stealing her breath, her voice. The manager, a puppet dancing to the tune of wealth, rushed to appease the tormentors, dismissing Sophia like a broken toy. She retreated, each step squelching with shame, the gazes of the onlookers burning into her back. In the sanctuary of the staff bathroom, surrounded by the remnants of her shattered composure, Sophia confronted her reflection. Tears threatened, but she refused to yield. A message from her beloved husband, Dante, flashed on her phone. "How's work, amore?" A simple question that held the weight of the world. Could she reveal the ugly truth? Could she expose herself to the vulnerability of seeking justice against a family that owned the city? No, she decided. Silence was survival. "Fine, home by midnight. Love you." Little did Sophia know, her silent suffering hadn't gone unnoticed. A young kitchen staffer named Marco, fueled by righteous anger, had captured the entire scene on his phone, and by dawn, that damning video would land on the desk of Dante Morelli, the man who held New York City's foundations in his hands, the man whose queen had been publicly humiliated. As Sophia rode the subway home, unaware of the storm brewing in her husband's heart, the Marlowe family unknowingly sealed their fate. In less than 7 days, they would learn that disrespecting a woman, even one clad in an apron, carried a price they could never imagine. Luca Romano, Dante's loyal confidant for 15 years, navigated the pre-dawn streets, his grip on the steering wheel mirroring the turmoil within him. He had delivered countless burdens to his boss, but the video on his phone felt different, heavier. It was a wound inflicted upon Dante's very soul. He arrived at the Brooklyn brownstone, a sanctuary that whispered of normalcy, a haven shielded from the brutal realities of their world. Maria, the housekeeper, greeted him with knowing eyes. Dante awaited in the kitchen, surrounded by newspapers, his face etched with the quiet dignity of a working man. Luca presented the phone, bracing himself for the inevitable explosion, but Dante watched in silence, his expression unreadable, his knuckles white as he clenched the device. The video ended, leaving a void filled only by the relentless ticking of the clock. Dante's voice, when it came, was a low, dangerous tremor. "She didn't tell me." He played the video again and again, his eyes honing in on every detail, every nuance of the Marlowe's cruelty. Then, a chilling realization. In the background, a familiar figure lurked. Richard Marlowe, the legitimate businessman Dante had been secretly collaborating with for years. A partnership built on carefully constructed lies and lucrative deals. The revelation struck Dante like a physical blow. Richard Marlowe, the man he trusted, the man who held the key to laundering his ill-gotten gains, was the father of the monster who had humiliated his wife. And he had stood there, a silent accomplice to his son's depravity. Dante's world tilted on its axis. The careful facade he had constructed, the fragile balance between his two lives, threatened to shatter. He ordered Luca to gather every scrap of information on the Marlowe family, every vulnerability, every secret. Their business arrangement was over. Revenge, fueled by love and righteous fury, would be his guiding star. But as news alerts flashed across their phones, announcing the Marlowe Group's attempt to deflect blame by smearing Sophia's reputation, Dante's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about payback. It was about dismantling an empire built on arrogance and disrespect. The meeting in the Red Hook warehouse crackled with suppressed rage. Dante's captains, eager to unleash their brand of brutality, offered swift, violent solutions. But Dante had a different plan, a more calculated, more devastating approach. He would choke their business, dismantle it, brick by brick, exposing their weaknesses, exploiting their vulnerabilities. He would wage war on their empire, and he would do it without leaving a trace of his involvement. Contracts, permits, financing, reputation, these were the pressure points. These were the keys to their destruction. He issued his orders, each word precise and chilling. They would gather intelligence, identify vulnerabilities, and systematically dismantle the Marlowe Group, leaving Richard Marlowe to witness the collapse of his empire. "And the kid?" Joey asked. "Ethan is a symptom. His father is the disease." Dante's chilling words hung in the air. "Ethan Marlowe will wish Wed just grabbed him. What's coming is worse than broken bones." As his captains departed, energized by the promise of retribution, Dante turned to Luca, his face softening for a moment. "What about Sophia?" Luca asked. "When do we tell her what we're doing?" Dante shook his head. "We don't. She's been through enough. When this is over, all she'll know is that the Marlowe apologized. The rest stays between us." He received a text from Sophia. "Can't sleep. Keep thinking about work. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what happened." Dante's heart ached. He replied, "Nothing to be sorry for. I love you. Well, talk in the morning." He pocketed his phone, sealing his resolve. The war had begun, and Sophia would be shielded from its ugly truths. Day 3 dawned, a day of subtle sabotage and calculated manipulation. Victor Chen, leveraging old favors and discreetly exchanging envelopes filled with cash, ensured that the Marlowe's Brooklyn waterfront development would languish in bureaucratic limbo. Tommy Bergosi, through carefully orchestrated mechanical issues and union maneuvering, brought the Hudson Yards Tower to the brink of collapse. In a sleek Manhattan office, Luca, armed with past favors and veiled promises, extracted crucial information from a risk analyst at Goldman Sachs, confirming the Marlowe Group's precarious financial position. Each action, seemingly insignificant on its own, contributed to the unraveling of the Marlowe's carefully constructed empire. The gears of retribution were turning, slowly, silently, relentlessly. Did you ever wonder if the threads of fate are already woven, long before we grasp their ends? Rebecca observed him, a delicate curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Why such interest, Lucas?" His smile held a universe of hidden intent. "Just gauging the temperature of the market," he offered, a casual dismissal. "Give my best to your brother," he said, already halfway out the door. Outside, a single text, brief and decisive. "Goldman is teetering. One more tremor and they crumble." That evening, within the stark confines of the Red Hook warehouse, Dante's team gathered. The whiteboard, a canvas of calculated risk, was a testament to their silent war. Project 1, Hudson Yards, a jewel worth $340 million, now plagued by cement shortages, its foundation crumbling under the weight of a looming deadline. Bank chase, already riddled with anxiety. Project 2, Tebeka, awaiting delayed steel, $280 million hanging precariously in the balance, fueled by Goldman's mounting cost overruns. Project 3, the shimmering Queens waterfront condos, $420 million entangled in a web of zoning variance complications, the same Goldman loan officer sweating through the threads. And finally, Project 4, Brooklyn Atlantic Yards, $380 million facing an environmental review process stretched into an agonizing eternity. Bank chase, bearing the brunt of Marlowe Group's exposure. Dante, a general surveying his battlefield, absorbed the details. $1.4 billion in total, Luca stated, the words hanging heavy with consequence. But it all hinges on our cooperation, Victor added. The Brooklyn permits are frozen, potentially for half a year. I've got the city poised to uncover every conceivable concern, from traffic snarls to preserving phantom wetlands. Dante turned to Tommy. The unions, ready to strike at the first sign of stalled negotiations, perfectly legal of course, just workers yearning for fairness. Joey, his voice a low hum, shared his intel. Richard's been desperately trying to quell investor anxieties, but a few have already bolted from the Queen's project, spooked by the lingering fallout from Sophia's ordeal. A quiet satisfaction settled over Dante. He circled the two bank names, Chase and Goldman, the puppet masters of these vulnerable ventures. Luca, his tone edged with steel, confirmed, were positioned to acquire their debt. Shell companies are ready to swoop in and buy those distressed construction loans. The banks, in their panic, will sell at a discount to mitigate exposure. Dante's mind calculated the leverage, the intoxicating power. Control the debt, control the air they breathe. Tomorrow, Dante announced, marker in hand, Hudson Yards misses its pour. Pecos steel delivery is delayed. By nightfall, Marlowe will be wrestling with twin crises, and just as their world begins to unravel, Lucas companies will approach those banks, appearing as their salvation. Victor nodded, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. They won't even suspect our hand in it. Dante's eyes blazed. Richard Marlowe believes this is a childish act, a prank involving spilled soda. As oblivious to the war as already losing. When does he realize? Tommy asked, his voice tinged with anticipation. When it's far too late. Dante glanced at his phone. A news alert. Marlowe Group stock plunges. Gentlemen, we're not just charting weaknesses anymore. We're triggering them. As of tomorrow, the Marlowe empire begins its slow, agonizing collapse. Gradual enough to avert immediate panic, swift enough to render it unstoppable. A question hung in the air. What about Ethan? Joey inquired, his brow furrowed, still flaunting on social media, untouched by reality, partying in the Hamptons. A shadow fell over Dante's face. Let him revel. When his father's world implodes, Ethan will discover that some humiliations cannot be remedied by mere wealth. The meeting drew to a close, his men vanishing into the Brooklyn night, each carrying their piece of the plan. Dante stood alone, the whiteboard his only company. 4 projects, 2 banks, 1 week. His phone vibrated. Sophia, the message read, her pain echoing through the words. "I'm trending on social media. People are so cruel, but I'm all right. We're all right." His chest tightened, a surge of protective fury surging through him. He replied, "You're the strongest person I know. This will pass. I promise." He withheld the truth. "It will pass because I will dismantle those who dared to inflict this upon you." He extinguished the lights, a grim resolve hardening his features. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "the Marlowe family will confront the truth that foundations support not only buildings, but empires, and Dante controls them all." The call pierced the stillness of 2:47 a.m. Richard Marlowe, his mind foggy with sleep, fumbled for his phone. Project manager, Hudson Yards. He sat up abruptly, his wife stirring beside him. "This had better be crucial, Mike." The superintendent's voice trembled, barely controlled. "Mr. Marlowe, we have a problem. The cement trucks didn't arrive." Richard's mind struggled to focus. "What do you mean, they didn't arrive?" "We've got a major pour scheduled for 6 a.m. I am aware, sir, but the supplier in Jersey just called an hour ago and said all of their trucks are down for emergency maintenance. Transmission failures on all of them. I'm unable to deliver." The words echoed in his mind as though someone else said them. A cold wave of horror was washing over him. "That's not possible. I know that's what I said, but they're adamant. The earliest we're going to get a delivery is next week." Richard threw off the covers. He began to pace. "We can't miss this pour. Chase are gonna trigger the penalty clause, and that's $2 million. I'm aware, sir. I've been calling our backup suppliers, and I can't find anyone that's free. We have to find someone else. Someone in this city must have cement trucks." Mike's voice suggested defeat. "I've been calling for an hour. Everyone's booked solid or they're having equipment issues. It's like the whole supply chain decided to collapse tonight." Richard's stomach twisted. "Keep trying. Offer double rates, triple. I don't care. We have to meet our deadline." He hung up and immediately started to call his COO, then his head of operations. Within 20 minutes, his entire executive team was awake, making calls, pulling strings. Nobody could help. At 6:30 a.m., the Hudson Yards site sat silent. No cement trucks, just union workers standing around collecting hourly wages for doing nothing. At 7:15 a.m., Richard's phone rang again. "Coca, project manager. Please tell me you have good news," Richard said. "Steel delivery is delayed. Supplier says there's a traffic accident blocking their route. They'll try again tomorrow." "Tomorrow? We're already behind schedule." "I know, sir. I'm as frustrated as you are." Richard ended the call and threw his phone across his home office. It bounced off the leather couch. 2 projects. Same morning, both critical delays. This wasn't coincidence. By 9 a.m., Richard sat in his Marlowe Group headquarters, a glass tower in Midtown with views of Central Park. His executive team filled the conference room, tired, confused, and increasingly nervous. "Talk to me," Richard demanded. "What the hell is happening?" His COO, Patricia Vance, pulled up a spreadsheet. Hudson Yards cement supplier claims mechanical failure across their fleet. Coca steel delivery blocked by a mysterious traffic incident. But here's what's weird. I called other developers. Nobody else is having supply problems. Just us, Richard said flatly. Just us. His CFO, Martin Ross, cleared his throat. The timing is unfortunate. Chase called this morning. They're aware of the Hudson Yards delay. If we don't pour foundation by Friday, the penalty clause activates. That's $2 million. Plus, They're considering raising our interest rate. On what grounds? Failure to meet milestone deadlines. It's in the contract. Richard's jaw clenched. One delay and they're panicking. It's not just the delay. Martin pulled up his laptop. Our stock dropped 3% yesterday after that Waitress incident went viral. Investors are jittery. Chase is asking if we're experiencing broader operational problems. The Waitress incident. Sophia Martinez. Richard had hoped his press release would contain that situation. Instead, it had exploded. Think pieces about wealth inequality, social media outrage, his son's face plastered across gossip sites. And now this. Get me new suppliers, Richard said. I don't care what it costs. We're trying, Patricia said, but every contractor we've contacted is either booked or she hesitated or giving us the runaround quotes that are 3 times normal rates, delivery windows that don't help. It's like someone's poisoned the well. Richard stood walking to the window, 43 floors below. Manhattan buzzed with construction cranes and traffic, his city, his empire. Someone was doing this, someone with enough reach to disrupt supply chains, enough power to coordinate attacks on multiple projects simultaneously. But who? At noon, Ethan Marlowe sat in a Hamptons beach club, mimosa in hand, laughing with friends. Dude, you're trending again, his buddy Chase said, scrolling through his phone. People are still talking about the Waitress thing. Ethan rolled his eyes. It was a joke. People need to chill. Your dad's press release didn't help. Made it worse, actually. Dad knows what he's doing. Ethan waved a hand dismissively. By next week, nobody will remember her name. His phone buzzed. Dad calling again. Ethan declined the call. Had already listened to one lecture this morning about family reputation and being more careful. He didn't need another. Everything cool? Chase asked. Fine, just Dad stressing about work stuff. Ethan signaled for another mimosa. Nothing I need to worry about. What Ethan didn't know, what his father was frantically trying to tell him, was that Marlowe Group stock had dropped another 2% by lunch, that 2 major investors were requesting emergency calls, that rumors were starting to circulate about operational instability. The empire wasn't just stressed, it was showing cracks. By 4:00 p.m., Richard had made 17 calls. Every supplier gave him the same story: backed up equipment issues, scheduling conflicts. Some apologized profusely, others were oddly curt. He sat alone in his office, staring at project timelines that were quickly becoming fantasies. His assistant knocked. Mr. Marlowe, Goldman Sachs, on line 3. They're asking about the Tebeka and Queens project. Goldman, his other major lender. Richard picked up. James, good to hear from you. Richard James Rothman's voice was professional but cool. I wanted to touch base about your projects. We're hearing some concerning reports about delays, minor setbacks. We're addressing them. Minor setbacks that are affecting 2 projects simultaneously. Our risk assessment team is getting nervous. There's nothing to be nervous about. We have the situation under control. Do you? A pause. Because our analysts are also looking at the negative publicity from earlier this week. Combined with these construction delays, it's creating a concerning pattern. Richard's hand tightened on the phone. James, we've worked together for 10 years. When have I ever failed to deliver? There's a first time for everything. Look, I'm not making threats. I'm giving you a friendly heads up. If these delays continue, if more problems emerge, Goldman will need to reassess our position. We have shareholders to answer to. I understand. I hope you do. Fix this, Richard, quickly. The line went dead. Richard sat in silence, his reflection staring back from the dark computer screen. 2 banks circling, 2 projects stalled. investors panicking, stock dropping. 48 hours ago, everything had been fine. Now it felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. He thought about Sofia Martinez, the waitress, the video that wouldn't die. Could this be connected? Some kind of retaliation? No, impossible. She was nobody. A restaurant worker. What could she possibly do to hurt him? He shook off the paranoia. This was just bad luck, terrible timing. It would pass. Richard pulled up his contacts, started making more calls. There had to be someone who could deliver cement, someone who owed him a favor. What he didn't realize, what he couldn't see, was that every call he made, every favor he tried to pull, every string he attempted to pull, was connected to a web that all led back to one man, a man whose wife had been humiliated on camera while Richard stood by and did nothing, a man who was just getting started in Brooklyn. Dante received updates throughout the day. Each one made him smile. Hudson Yard stalled. Tebeka stalled. Both banks circling. Stock down 5% total. He looked at Luca. Tomorrow we tighten the noose. The war had begun, and Richard Marlowe was losing without even knowing he was fighting. Day 4 started with a phone call Richard never expected. "Mr. Marlowe, this is Diane Chen from the Department of Environmental Protection." The voice was polite, bureaucratic, deadly. "I'm calling about your Queens waterfront project." Richard's stomach dropped. Another problem. What about it? "We've received concerns regarding potential wetland disturbance. We'll need to conduct an additional environmental impact assessment before we can approve your zoning variance. We already passed environmental review months ago. New information has come to light. Possible habitat for protected bird species. We take these matters very seriously. How long will this take? Hard to say. Could be 60 to 90 days. Maybe longer if we find issues. 90 days. The Queens project was supposed to break ground in 3 weeks. Goldman was already nervous about Tebeka. Now this is ridiculous," Richard said, trying to keep his voice level. "Who raised these concerns?" "Anonymous tip to our office, but we're obligated to investigate all credible reports." Diane's tone suggested the conversation was over. "You'll receive official notification by end of business today." She hung up. Richard stared at his phone. Anonymous tip, just like the cement trucks mysteriously failing, just like the steel deliveries getting delayed, just like everything else falling apart this week. This wasn't coincidence. Someone was orchestrating this. By 10 a.m., the rumor started. It began on Urban Development Watch, a niche blog that covered New York real estate. A post titled, "Marlowe Group Projects Face Multiple Delays. What's Really Going On?" The article was careful, avoiding direct accusations, but it asked uncomfortable questions. Sources close to several Marlowe Group construction sites report unusual delays this week. Cement suppliers, steel deliveries, and now permit issues. While each incident appears isolated, industry insiders are wondering if there's a deeper problem. Some point to the viral video of Ethan Marlowe's behavior at last week's charity gala as evidence of a company culture problem. Others suggest possible financial instability. By noon, the story had been picked up by 3 other real estate blogs. By 2:00 p.m., the New York Post real estate section ran a brief item. "Marlowe Group faces construction headaches." By 4:00 p.m., Richard's investor line was ringing off the hook. "Richard, what's going on?" Marcus Chen, a Hong Kong investor with $30 million in the TBA project, didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'm reading about permit problems, supply chain issues. Should I be concerned?" "Absolutely not. Just some unfortunate timing." "Unfortunate timing?" Marcus' voice sharpened. I put serious money into this development based on your timeline. Now, I'm hearing it could be delayed months. We're working through some temporary setbacks. The same week your son becomes a viral villain, the same week your stock drops 5%. Forgive me for seeing a pattern. Richard's jaw clenched. Marcus, I've never missed a deadline with you. Have I? There's always a first time. I want to call tomorrow with concrete answers. Not promises. Answers. The line went dead. 3 more calls followed. Different investors. Same anxiety. Everyone wanted reassurance Richard couldn't provide because he didn't understand what was happening. Patricia Vance knocked on Richard's office door at 5 p.m., her face grim. More bad news? Richard asked. City Council postponed the vote on the Brooklyn Atlantic Yards variance, said they need more time to review community feedback. Community feedback? We addressed all their concerns months ago. Apparently, new concerns have emerged: traffic studies, historic preservation questions. A council member is calling for a full public hearing. Patricia sat down heavily. Richard, something's wrong. This isn't normal bureaucratic delay. It's coordinated. Richard had been thinking the same thing all day. Who has this kind of reach? Who can disrupt supply chains, influence city permits, and plant stories and real estate blogs simultaneously? Someone with serious power, someone with connections across multiple industries. Patricia paused. Someone we pissed off. Richard's mind raced through possibilities. A competitor, a rival developer. But this felt personal, not just business. The waitress, Sophia Martinez, the woman from the video, Richard said slowly. Do we know anything about her? Patricia pulled up her tablet. Sophia Martinez, 32, works at Riverside Grand Hotel, been there 4 years, lives in Brooklyn, married. She scrolled. Husband is Dante Morelli. Listed occupation, construction contractor. Construction. Richard's blood went cold. What kind of contractor? His voice was barely a whisper. Patricia tapped more. Doesn't specify, but she stopped, her face going pale. Richard Morelli, that name sounds familiar. From where? Your shell company contracts. The ones that source cement and steel at below market rates. Didn't we sign papers with a Morelli construction group 3 years ago? Richard's hands started shaking. He pulled up his private files, the ones his lawyer handled, the contracts he never looked at too closely because they saved him millions. There it was. Morelli Construction Group. Dante Morelli, principal. The man whose wife Ethan had humiliated was Richard's secret business partner, the man who controlled the supply chain that all 4 Marlowe projects depended on. Oh, God, Richard whispered. Patricia stared at him. What? I need to make a call. Richard's voice was hollow. Get out, Richard. Now she left, closing the door. Richard's fingers trembled as he scrolled through his contacts. There, the private number head, used only twice before, the direct line to Dante Morelli's office. He pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. You've reached Morelli Construction. Leave a message. Voicemail. But Richard knew Dante had to be there, had to be watching this number. Dante, it's Richard Marlowe. I think we need to talk about recent developments. Call me back, please. He hung up and waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. No call back. Richard tried again. Voicemail and again. Voicemail and again. The message was clear. Dante Morelli wasn't taking his calls. At 700 p.m. Richard sat alone in his office, the city lights twinkling below. His empire, built over 30 years, was shaking. Stock down 7% now. 2 banks getting nervous. Investors demanding answers. Projects stalled. All because his idiot son poured soda on a waitress. No, all because Richard had stood there and watched it happen. All because Head released that press statement blaming her. All because Head assumed the woman was nobody, powerless, someone who could be crushed without consequence. Had been catastrophically wrong. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop calling. You'll get your meeting when I'm ready. Not before. Richard's hands trembled as he typed back. I can explain. Let me fix this. The response came immediately. You can't fix humiliation with a phone call, Richard. You should know that by now. Then nothing. The number went dark. Richard sat in the silence of his office, understanding finally settling over him like a burial shroud. Dante Morelli wasn't just angry. He wasn't looking for an apology or a payoff. He was systematically destroying everything Richard had built. And Richard had given him the blueprint 3 years ago when they became partners. Outside, night fell over Manhattan. In the glass buildings and construction sites and city offices, the pieces of Dante's plan continued to fall into place. The noose was tightening, and Richard Marlowe had just realized his neck was in it. Richard's emergency board meeting began at 8 p.m. in the Marlowe Group's executive conference room. 12 people sat around Polish mahogany. Lawyers, executives, board members, all of them looked exhausted. We're being targeted, Richard said without preamble. Systematically, deliberately, and I know by whom. He told them about Dante Morelli, about the shell companies, about Sofia Martinez, about the connection had been too blind to see. His head counsel, Gerald Strauss, went pale. You're saying our primary supplier is married to the woman in the video. I'm saying our primary supplier, I asked the woman's husband, and he's been cutting off our air supplies since Tuesday. Then we sue him, Patricia said. Breach of contract, tortious interference. We bury him in litigation. Gerald held up a hand. Wait, let me pull those contracts. He spent 5 minutes on his laptop, his expression growing darker. Finally, he looked up. We can't sue. What do you mean we can't sue? Richard's voice rose. Has deliberately sabotaging our projects. Technically, he isn't. Morelli Construction Group doesn't directly supply us. They supply the suppliers who supply us. The contracts are structured through intermediaries, very carefully structured. Gerald's finger traced connections on his screen. If we sue, we'd have to explain these shell company arrangements in court. That means exposing financial structures we've used to avoid taxes and regulatory oversight for 3 years. Silence. How bad? Patricia asked quietly. Federal investigation bad? IRS audit bad? Possibly RICO charges bad? Gerald removed his glasses. These contracts were designed for plausible deniability. They work great when everyone's cooperating, but if we sue, we're essentially revealing our own illegal financial engineering. Richard felt the walls closing in. So, we just let him destroy us. I'm saying litigation isn't an option, at least not against Morelli directly. Gerald thought for a moment. What about City Hall? Can we pressure the permit offices to speed things up? Patricia shook her head. Already tried. Called in every favor. Everyone's suddenly unable to help. Either they're genuinely backlogged, or someone's gotten to them first. Someone named Morelli, Richard muttered. Martin, the CFO, cleared his throat. There's another problem. Goldman called again this afternoon. They're conducting a routine review of our loan portfolio. Translation: they're looking for reasons to call our loans early or trigger penalty clauses. Can they do that if we miss contracted milestones? Yes, Hudson Yards missed its foundation deadline. Tebeka is 3 weeks behind. If the Queen's project gets delayed 60 days because of this environmental review, well, miss that deadline, too. Martin pulled up a spreadsheet. 3 missed milestones triggers a review clause. We need to refinance immediately or face default. How much are we talking about? $420 million. Due in 30 days if they invoke the clause. The number hung in the air like a bomb. We don't have that kind of liquidity, Patricia said. I know. Richard stood pacing to the window. 420 million. They could maybe scrape together half by selling non-core assets. But the other half we could bring in new investors, someone suggested. With our stock down 7% and construction delays, making headlines. Martin shook his head. No major investor will touch us right now, not at terms we could accept. Then we go back to Morelli, Richard said. Make him an offer, money, ownership stake, whatever he wants. His not answering your calls, Patricia pointed out. Then I'll go to him to his office, his home, wherever he is, I'll find him. And what? Gerald interrupted. Apologize? Beg? Has not doing this for money, Richard. Has doing this because your son humiliated his wife and you backed Ethan instead of making it right. Richard turned on him. What was I supposed to do? Throw my own son under the bus? Yes, Patricia's voice cracked through the room. That's exactly what you should have done. Issue a real apology. Fire Ethan from his position. Make it clear that behavior was unacceptable. Instead, you blamed the victim and assumed no one would care about a waitress. I didn't know who she was married to. That shouldn't have mattered. Patricia stood furious. Even if she'd been married to nobody, what Ethan did was wrong, but you were more worried about protecting the air hung thick with anticipation, a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. What unseen forces could bring a titan to its knees in a mere handful of days? A legacy built on brick and ambition, crumbling before the eyes of those who believed it invincible. Family, a shield once thought impenetrable, had become the very instrument of their undoing. The whispers in the room echoed the sentiment. The price of shielding a flawed son might be the ruination of them all. Ethan Marlowe, oblivious to the storm brewing, reveled in the glittering excess of a Soho nightclub. His phone buzzed incessantly. A persistent chorus of worried pleas from his father, his Aunt Patricia, even Martin, the family's steadfast CFO. But Ethan, cocooned in the warm embrace of privilege and alcohol, dismissed them all. Another lecture about family reputation, he scoffed. What he failed to grasp, in his drunken stupor, was that his father stood on the precipice of financial ruin, a consequence of Ethan's heedless actions. A single act of cruelty, a moment of thoughtless arrogance, had unleashed a chain reaction that threatened to shatter the Marlowe empire. Richard Marlowe, haunted by the ghostly reflection of his own helplessness in his phone screen, read the cryptic message. Your lawyers are probably telling you that you can't sue me. They're right. Your politicians are probably not returning calls. Also correct. You built your empire on my foundation, Richard. I can remove it brick by brick. The words were a chilling promise, a slow, deliberate dismantling of everything he had worked for. He wanted me to suffer, Richard admitted, his voice hollow, to understand what it feels like to be powerless. Patricia's quiet suggestion hung heavy in the air. Then maybe you should beg. The faces around the table, etched with fear and exhaustion, were a stark reminder of the stakes. These were not just executives, but families, mortgages, careers, all inextricably linked to the Marlowe Group. He thought of Ethan, lost in his world of frivolous indulgence, and of Sophia Martinez, the woman he had so easily dismissed. He thought of the press release, the calculated attempt to shift blame, to protect his son at the expense of an innocent woman. He had made the wrong choice at every turn, Richard realized, the weight of his decisions crushing him. Set up a meeting with Morelli, he finally conceded, his voice thick with defeat. Whatever it takes. Tell him I'm ready to talk. The words tasted like ashes in his mouth. Tell him Richard Marlowe is ready to apologize properly this time. The empire he had so meticulously constructed was now on life support, its fate held in the hands of a man he had never considered a threat. The message arrived, curt and demanding. Tomorrow, come alone. Address to follow. The war was over. This was not a negotiation, but a surrender. Meanwhile, in a Queen's diner, Luca, a man who moved in the shadows, negotiated with investment bankers, the vultures circling the wounded beast, Sentinel Capital Partners, a name whispered with reverence and a touch of unease, was ready to seize the opportunity where others saw only risk. Luca calmly presented the offer, knowing the bankers' desperation outweighed their caution. They saw a sinking ship. He saw a treasure trove of distressed assets, ready to be salvaged. By noon, the deal was done. Luca controlled $228 million in Marlowe Group debt, a stranglehold on their future. He called Dante, his voice devoid of emotion. It's done. We own them. Good, Dante replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. Now, we wait. Richard's banker, his voice laced with discomfort, confirmed his worst fears. The debt had been sold, passed into the hands of shadowy entities with offshore registrations and a taste for distressed assets. Distressed? Richard scoffed, but the panic rising in his chest betrayed his bravado. He reached out to Lisa at Goldman Sachs, only to be met with defensive excuses and hollow assurances. The banks were bailing, their loyalty evaporating in the face of potential collapse. Martin's frantic call painted an even bleaker picture. 3 banks, $228 million in debt, all sold in a single morning to entities that seemed to exist only on paper. Shell companies, Richard realized, controlled by the same puppet master, Morelli. The full scope of Dante's strategy struck him with brutal force. This was not just about revenge, but a hostile takeover, executed with cold, calculated precision. They were trapped, Martin confirmed, and the key was in Dante Morelli's hand. Richard's phone buzzed again. The message was a chilling reminder of his powerlessness. Check your bank accounts. Notice anything different? That's what powerless feels like. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Address 847 With Avenue, Brooklyn. Come alone. Bring your son. Ethan. This wasn't just about him anymore. His son, the spoiled product of privilege, would have to face the consequences of his actions. He forwarded the message to Ethan, a stark command. Be there. No excuses. The empire, once a symbol of his ambition, was now a puppet on Dante Morelli's strings, all because of a glass of Coca-Cola, all because Richard had forgotten a fundamental truth. In New York City, the men who build the foundations hold all the power. The emergency board meeting reconvened, the atmosphere heavy with dread. Ethan, summoned from his world of carefree indulgence, sat at the table, his confusion slowly giving way to dawning horror. Someone explain what's happening, he demanded, the entitled arrogance in his voice jarringly out of place. Richard looked at his son, seeing him for the first time without the filter of paternal blindness. 27 years old, and never worked a real day in his life, never faced a real consequence. That was about to change. Martin laid out the grim reality. Stock plummeting, projects stalled, debt spiraling out of control. Someone, Patricia said coldly, bought our loans from the banks. Someone who now has the power to bankrupt us whenever they choose. Dante Morelli, Richard confirmed, the husband of the woman you poured Coca-Cola on for fun. The weight of his actions crashed down on Ethan, the casual cruelty of his act magnified by the devastating consequences. It was insane, Ethan protested, over some soda, over humiliation. You humiliated his wife in front of hundreds of people, Richard snapped, his voice cracking with suppressed rage. What did you think would happen? I thought she was nobody, Ethan stammered. She is somebody, Gerald corrected, quietly. She's married to the most powerful man in New York construction. Richard's voice was laced with guilt. I saw the whole thing. I saw you humiliate that woman, and I said nothing because I was more worried about making a scene than doing what was right. So this is my fault. Dad, you run this company, Ethan retorted, desperately trying to deflect blame. You're the one who put out that press release blaming her. Richard stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Every DUI I've covered up, every harassment complaint I've settled, every stupid mistake you've made, I've fixed it. But this time, I can't fix it because you didn't just offend some random woman. You started a war with a man who literally builds cities. The room fell silent, the weight of their collective failures pressing down on them. They were trapped, Richard confirmed, and it's your fault. It's our fault, Patricia corrected, her voice sharp. Richard could have fired you on the spot, could have publicly apologized to Sofia Martinez. Instead, he protected you. We all did, and now we're all paying for it. Tomorrow we meet with Dante Morelli, Richard declared, his eyes hard, and we accept whatever terms he offers because the alternative is watching 30 years of work disappear. Richard's composure finally shattered. Do you even remember her face? When that soda hit her, the way she froze, the way everyone stared. Ethan said nothing. You don't, do you? Because she wasn't real to you. None of them are real to you. The staff, the workers, the people who actually build what we design. Richard's voice shook. But they're real to Dante Morelli. The meeting adjourned, leaving Richard and Ethan alone to face the daunting reality of their impending reckoning. Ethan was sorry, but it was too late to change the course of what had started. Richard sighed. Richard's exhaustion was obvious. Money does not matter to a man like Dante Morelli. Power does, respect does, and you took both from his wife. Richard's empire glittered, but it belongs to men like Dante Morelli, the ones who poured concrete and pulled permits and made sure the foundations were solid. He now had to get some sleep. Tomorrow, they both faced the consequences. Dante Morelli didn't just want an apology. He wanted them to understand what it meant to be powerless, and he had planned to take the time and effort to make Richard understand. 847 With Avenue was not what Richard expected. No gleaming office tower, no Marvel lobby, just a plain brick building in Brooklyn with a faded sign reading Morelli Construction Supply. The warehouse that brought down the Marlowe Group. Richard and Ethan arrived at 9:55 a.m. in Richard's Mercedes. The drive was quiet as Ethan looked as if he hadn't slept. Let me do the talking, Richard said as they got out. I wasn't planning to say anything. Luca met them at the door and walked them to a second-floor office, and sitting behind the desk in jeans and a work shirt was Dante Morelli. No expensive suit, no intimidating presence, just a man who could have been any construction foreman in the city, except for his eyes, dark, intelligent, and utterly calm. Sit, Dante said. Richard and Ethan sat in the two chairs facing the desk. There was a long and uncomfortable pause as the three men looked at each other. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Richard began. There was no misunderstanding about what happened to his wife and how Richard had done everything to bury the problem. Dante replied with a quiet but precise voice. It was no misunderstanding, Ethan interrupted. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. You're always drunk. You're always not thinking. Dante's eyes shifted to Ethan. I know about the DUIs. The harassment complaints, the settlements. You've gone through life, believing your money makes you untouchable. Today, you learn different. Mr. Morelli Richard interjected. We want to make this right. Whatever you need, compensation, a public apology. I don't need anything from you. Dante stood, walking to the window. In 4 days, I've taken your empire to the edge of collapse. Your bank sold your debt to me. Right now, I own 35% of your financial oxygen. Richard then turned and faced them and said that he could keep going and watch you declare bankruptcy. What do you want? Richard asked quietly. I want you to understand something. Dante returned to his desk. Sitting down, you build towers, luxury apartments, places rich people live, but you don't build them. Men like me do. We pour the concrete, lay the steel, wire the electricity. Without us, you have nothing but blueprints and investor meetings. You forgot that the people who actually build your empire matter. So, I reminded you. Richard nodded slowly. You made your point. We understand. Good. Then, here are my terms. Dante pulled out a single sheet of paper, no negotiate, and slid it across the desk. First, Dante said, public apology televised both of you to Sophia. The next 3 terms for the compensation was agreed. Fourth, Dante's eyes locked on Ethan. You disappear. No more public events. No more parties that end up on social media. You become invisible. Ethan got upset about this term, but Dante made him understood the meaning of humiliation. Dante pulled out 4 copies of a contract for the agreement. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow. One more thing, Dante said as they reached the door, and said that his wife doesn't know anything. She is a good person and better than them. Have you ever wondered what truly lies beneath the glittering surface of wealth and power, the silent battles waged in the shadows, where love and loyalty are the ultimate currency? Richard nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the storm brewing within. They departed, the vast warehouse fading behind the tinted windows of the Mercedes, a monument to salvaged pride bought at a steep price, $130 million. Ethan finally murmured, the sum hanging heavy in the air, all for a spilled drink. But it was more than that, Richard thought, his voice a hollow echo within himself. It was for forgetting the fundamental truth that every life holds value, that actions ripple outwards with unforeseen consequences, that money, no matter how vast, is no shield against the reckoning of human decency. The journey back to Manhattan unfolded in a weighty silence, each mile a testament to their humbling fall. Meanwhile, in the solitude of his office, Dante set in motion the gears of retribution. It's done, he relayed to Luca, his voice a low promise. Press conference tomorrow. Afterward, we release the supply chains, allow their projects to proceed. But the debt, that remained, an insurance policy, a silent threat. Should they falter again, he finished, a chilling resolve hardening his tone, we crush them. He turned to Sophia's photograph, a silent vow etched on his face. Tomorrow, she would witness justice, a spectacle broadcast for the world to see, never knowing the fierce, hidden war he had waged to deliver it to her. The Marlowe Group's Manhattan headquarters buzzed with anticipation as the clock ticked towards the noon press conference. By 11:30, the lobby teemed with reporters, a sea of faces hungry for a glimpse into the unfolding drama. This was no ordinary apology. The story of Sophia Martinez had struck a raw nerve, igniting a firestorm of debate around wealth inequality, workplace abuse, and the swift, unforgiving power of viral justice. Everyone craved to witness the final act. In her modest Brooklyn apartment, Sophia watched the live stream unfold on her laptop. Dante's morning call echoed in her mind. Watch the news at noon. Trust me. Confusion had given way to a hesitant curiosity. Now, as the Marlowe Group logo filled the screen, a knot of apprehension tightened in her stomach. The press room, a stage set for atonement, buzzed with the low murmur of anticipation. Cameras clicked, capturing every detail. Then, Richard and Ethan Marlowe entered, shadows of their former selves. The confident billionaires of gala photos were gone, replaced by men visibly burdened by the weight of their actions. Richard's face was ashen, etched with remorse. Ethan's trademark smirk had vanished, replaced by a palpable discomfort. They sat alone at the table, microphones poised to amplify their confession, stripped of PR teams and legal advisors, facing the consequences of their deeds. Richard cleared his throat, the sound amplified in the expectant silence. "Thank you for coming. We called this press conference to address an incident that occurred last week at a charity gala." He paused, gathering his composure. "My son, Ethan, poured a beverage on a waitress named Sofia Martinez. He did this deliberately, while others laughed and recorded. I was present. I witnessed it and did nothing to stop it." The room held its breath, the only sound the relentless clicking of camera shutters. Following the incident, our company released a statement suggesting Miss Martinez had behaved unprofessionally. That statement was false. Miss Martinez did nothing wrong. She was simply doing her job when my son decided to humiliate her for entertainment. Richard's voice cracked, a tremor of shame running through his words. What my son did was deplorable. What I did, standing by, then blaming the victim, was equally deplorable. We allowed our wealth and privilege to blind us to the inherent dignity of others. We were catastrophically wrong. He turned to the camera, his gaze direct and unwavering. "Miss Martinez, I am profoundly sorry. You deserved respect, dignity, and basic human decency. Instead, you received cruelty and injustice. There is no excuse for what happened to you. None." Ethan shifted, his discomfort palpable. Richard nodded, a silent cue. Ethan leaned into the microphone, his voice barely a whisper. "I was drunk, but that's not an excuse. I humiliated you because I thought it was funny, because I've gone through life treating people as entertainment, as things that don't matter." His voice tightened, strained with a barely suppressed emotion. "What I did to you is wrong, completely wrong, and I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." A reporter's voice cut through the silence. "Are you apologizing because you want to, or because your company is facing financial difficulties?" Richard didn't hesitate. "Both. Our company has suffered consequences for our behavior, as it should. Those consequences forced us to confront what we'd done, to see Miss Martinez as a real person, not collateral damage in our privileged lives." "What consequences?" Another reporter pressed. "Specifically, construction delays, investor concerns, stock decline. The market responded to our moral failure with economic consequences." "That's appropriate. What about the financial arrangements?" A voice probed. "Some sources suggest you've lost significant assets. We're making a $50 million donation to the Hospitality Workers Relief Fund, which supports service industry workers facing abuse. Additionally, we're transferring ownership stakes in one of our properties to charity." Richard's jaw tightened, the faintest flicker of defiance in his eyes. These errant punishments, their attempts at restitution. "Mr. Ethan Marlowe," a reporter called out, "will you continue in your role at Marlowe Group?" Ethan looked at his father, then back at the assembled press. "I'll be working behind the scenes. No public role, no representing the company. I need to learn that visibility is a privilege, not a right." The humiliation on his face was stark, undeniable, real. The press conference continued for 20 minutes, a relentless barrage of questions. Richard and Ethan answered them all, never deflecting, never making excuses. When it ended, they departed, their usual confident stride replaced by a defeated shuffle. They looked smaller, diminished. Sophia sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. They'd apologized, truly apologized, on camera, in front of the entire world. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from friends, co-workers, and strangers who had followed her story. The video was already going viral. Not the original humiliation, but this, two powerful men brought to their knees by accountability. "Did you see?" her co-worker Maria texted. "They actually did it." Sophia couldn't respond. She simply replayed the video again and again, hardly believing the reality of it. In a coffee shop, Dante watched the unfolding drama on his phone, Luca by his side. "It's already got 2 million views," Luca said, trending #1 on Twitter. The reactions were swift and brutal. This is what actual accountability looks like. Billionaires finally facing real consequences. Never thought I'd see it. That wasn't PR. That was a public execution. Within an hour, the narrative had shifted. This wasn't just an apology. It was a symbol, proof that even the wealthy and powerful could be held accountable. By 3 p.m., the effects rippled through Dante's network. "Cement trucks are rolling to Hudson Yards," Victor reported. "Just got the green light. Steel delivery confirmed for Tribeca," Tommy added. "City permits are suddenly moving forward," Joey said with a smile. "Environmental review expedited. Zoning variances approved. It's like magic." It wasn't magic. It was Dante giving a silent signal that the war was over. The Marlos had paid their debt, and construction could resume. By evening, Marlowe Group stock had stabilized, up 2% by the closing bell. Investors, seeing the public accountability and signs that projects were moving forward again, stopped panicking. Banks that had been nervous relaxed. Goldman quietly indicated they wouldn't call any loans early. Chase sent Richard a message congratulating him on handling the situation appropriately. The empire was breathing again, but everyone knew the truth. Dante Morelli held the strings. One wrong move, one slip back into arrogance, and he could pull them again. At 8 p.m., Dante came home to his brownstone in Brooklyn. Sophia was in the kitchen making dinner, the television flickering in the background, replaying clips of the press conference. She turned as he entered, her eyes red from crying. "Did you see?" she asked. "I saw." He pulled her into a hug. "I can't believe they actually apologized. I thought nothing would happen, that people like them never face consequences." "Everyone faces consequences, eventually," Dante said quietly. "Sometimes it just takes longer." Sophia pulled back, studying his face. "You seem unsurprised. I'm glad you got justice. That's all." She searched his eyes, some instinct telling her there was more to this story, but she didn't push. "Thank you," she said finally, "for being here, for supporting me through this, always." They ate dinner together, watching the news coverage. Sophia smiled for the first time in a week, reading supportive messages from strangers who had witnessed her fight and win. What she didn't know, what she would likely never know, was that her husband hadn't just supported her. He had waged a silent war, dismantled an empire, bought their debt, controlled their fate, all without firing a shot, all because someone had forgotten that the woman serving drinks was someone's wife, someone's love, someone who mattered. Dante Morelli had reminded them, and the whole city had watched the lesson unfold. Day 7, night. The city had moved on to new scandals, new outrages, but in certain circles, boardrooms, construction sites, city offices, people still whispered about what had happened to the Marlos. Dante sat in his living room, reading the Wall Street Journal. The headline read, "Marlowe Group stabilizes after tumultuous week. Projects resume." The article praised Richard's transparent accountability and noted that construction delays had mysteriously resolved themselves. Analysts called it a remarkable recovery. They had no idea what had really happened. Sophia came downstairs, fresh from a shower, wrapped in Dante's old college sweatshirt. She curled up beside him on the couch. "Still reading about it?" she asked. "Just checking the aftermath." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Dante, can I ask you something?" "Always." "How did all this happen? The apology, the press conference, everything. It feels like more than just public pressure." Her eyes searched his face. Dante set down the newspaper. He had known this conversation would come eventually. Sophia was too smart not to wonder. "What do you think happened?" he asked carefully. She chose her words slowly. "I think the Marlowes had some very unfortunate problems this week. Construction problems, financial problems, problems that made them realize they needed to make things right. That's one way to see it. And I think," she continued, "that my husband, who works in construction, might know more about those problems than he's telling me." Dante met her eyes. "Would you want to know? Really?" Sophia considered this. The past week, watching powerful men brought low, seeing justice done, it had felt like a miracle, like the universe finally balancing itself. But miracles didn't just happen. Someone made them happen. "You didn't just offend me," she said quietly. "You took down an empire, didn't you?" Dante smiled faintly. "No, amore. I reminded them who builds their foundations. There's a difference. How much of it was you? Does it matter?" "I guess not." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I just want to know one thing. Are you safe? Did you do anything that could come back on us?" "Everything I did was legal. Complicated, but legal." Dante kissed the top of her head. "And it's over now. They learned their lesson. We move forward." Sophia nodded, accepting this. Some questions didn't need full answers. "I love you," she said. "Whatever you did or didn't do, thank you for having my back always. That's not negotiable." They sat in comfortable silence, the TV playing softly in the background. 3 weeks later, Ethan Marlowe's Instagram account went dark. No more nightclub photos, no more yacht parties, no more designer suits and champagne bottles. Friends texted, but he didn't respond. Tabloids called his publicist, but received no comment. He still worked at Marlowe Group, in a windowless office on the 4th floor, reviewing contract proposals and market reports. Important work, invisible work. His assistant brought him coffee one morning. "Rough night, Mr. Marlowe?" "Every night's rough," Ethan muttered. He had learned what true powerlessness felt like. Not having money taken away, his trust fund was intact, but having relevance taken away. Being nobody, being invisible, just like he had made Sophia feel. The lesson was carved into his bones now. Richard Marlowe met with Dante once a month, always at the Brooklyn warehouse, always alone. They reviewed ongoing projects, discussed supply schedules, maintained their business relationship. Richard never missed a meeting, never questioned prices, never complained about terms. He had learned his place in the ecosystem. "The Hudson Yards tower is ahead of schedule," Richard reported. "Should complete by July." "Good." Dante reviewed the paperwork. "And the donation? The charity? $50 million is fully deployed. They've already helped 200 workers dealing with harassment cases." Dante nodded. "Approval. Your son, invisible, as requested, has different now, quieter, maybe even learning something." Good for him. Richard hesitated. I wanted to thank you for not destroying us completely. You could have. I didn't need to destroy you. I needed you to understand. Dante met his eyes. You understand now? Yes. Yes. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. I understand. He left with his signed contracts, driving back to Manhattan, still building towers, but never forgetting who made them possible. For weeks after the press conference, Sophia returned to work at the Riverside Grand Hotel. She had considered quitting. The memories were painful, but she realized that would be letting them win in a different way. So she walked through those doors with her head held high. The staff applauded when she entered, quietly, respectfully, but they applauded. Marco hugged her. Even the manager, red-faced and awkward, mumbled an apology. I should have defended you that night. I am sorry. Sophia nodded. Thank you. She worked her shift, served tables, brought drinks, did her job with pride. When wealthy patrons came through, some recognized her. A few whispered. Most looked away, uncomfortable. But Sophia noticed something else. They were polite now, careful. They said please and thank you. They didn't snap fingers or make demands. Word had spread. The waitress who brought billionaires to their knees, the woman you didn't disrespect. At the end of her shift, an elderly woman at table 7 left a note with her tip. Thank you for showing them that dignity matters. We're all rooting for you. Sophia folded the note carefully and put it in her pocket. That night, she came home to Dante cooking dinner, his terrible attempt at pasta that would probably be inedible, but would be made with love. How was work? He asked. Good. Really good, actually. She kissed his cheek. People were nice, respectful, as they should be. I think I'm going to be okay, Sophia said. Better than okay. I feel like I matter now, like people see me. Dante turned from the stove, taking her hands. You always mattered, amore. Some people just needed to be reminded. She smiled. My mysterious husband who builds foundations, that's me. They ate terrible pasta and laughed about their day and talked about ordinary things because that's what they were, ordinary people, a contractor and a waitress building a life together in Brooklyn. The world would never know that Dante Morelli controlled the city's construction empire, that he brought down billionaires with a phone call and rebuilt them with a nod. That was fine. He didn't need recognition. He just needed Sophia to smile when she came home, to walk with her head held high, to know she was protected, valued, loved. Everything else was just concrete and steel, foundations holding up a city that would never know his name, and that's exactly how Dante wanted it.